Alright, today we are talking about tweezers in the locksmith business. There are many different kinds of tweezers, and I am very particular about the tweezers that I use, and oftentimes I see the advertisements for these big pin and tweezers that have this super blunt nose and maybe have grooves in it for pins. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, those, for some reason, they seem to be selling, so let's make my own pair of tweezers. We have the Mega Tweez. The Mega Tweez is capable of getting in there from a distance and picking up your pin. And when you can pick up your pin, then you can, oh wait, missed right there. Okay, let's try again. The Mega Tweez is the absolute monster of, I didn't get one. I may have to drill some holes in it. But let's see, I think I can get this one. No, I didn't get that one. Well, I may have to tweak my Mega Tweez a little bit, but, it's a work in progress. So, back to a more serious note. Let's go over the tweezers that are really commonly used in the locksmith business. And one of the main ones that you see in catalogs is the kind with the little grooves in it to conveniently hold a pen like this in its little jaws. And we're pretty much all familiar with pinning tweezers. There's bigger ones, smaller ones. This one is actually a M-Heart pair, and I really never use it. And I'm going to talk about why I really never use it. And we're also going to talk about the different kinds. So one of the main things that I just cannot understand how somebody would use the reverse action tweezers. Maybe you're used to it, just like I'm used to one thing. Everybody has their own patterns, but that, to me, while it holds the pen there, it's very counterintuitive, I guess, to me, because you just have to do that, and then you got to squeeze again. Where with a regular pair of tweezers, you squeeze once, and when you let it go, it drops the pen in. So reverse action tweezers are good for holding things steady. Let's say for some weird reason you had to do this. That is what, so it'll stay. That it would be, or holding stuff to, if you're firing something, like heating up a piece of metal and you don't want it to burn your fingers. That's what that's for. It's not really for open, close, and you do that a lot while you're pinning locks. And I will use this in another example when I get to that point. On the same token, the reverse action angle tweezers. Angle tweezers, in my opinion, are one of the most ridiculous things to be trying to use as a locksmith, because you're going in an angle, you're filling up the cylinder hole. Once you have the plug out, you've got an angle there, and I don't even see, if you've used one of these, I don't even really see how you do it effectively. And here we have also, these are regular tweezers, but these are angle tweezers. Now, and I'll have it up. Many pairs of tweezers have this centering pin, and what that does is go in a hole so that the blades of the two sides don't mesh right. Grind that little son of a bitch off if you get a pair of those, because you know what, it pokes through. And if you're squeezing your pliers really hard and you slide your thumb across that, you cut your thumb, trust me. So if you do get that, hopefully not in the angle style. Angle are only good for certain things, and in my opinion, it's not really good for a lock. Maybe if it was a bit longer, but with an angle, even if you go upside down pushing pins in, you're not even halfway there. You'd have to flip it around. No angle tweezer tips. You don't need those really. These, use them for soldering, use them for things that you have to hold steady for a while, but not good as an active locksmith pair of tweezers. So then we're going to go back to regular tweezers, which is obviously my favorite type. Now every one of these is just a slightly different version. I've got some stainless steel ones here, You can see this one had a centering pin that I ground out of there. And these are all pretty similar. Most of these actually came in a kit, Harbor Freight kits that included these. So you're gonna get these. I just throw them aside. And you'll see also that some of the tips of these were ground down, like that one and this one, and that was probably because these were blunt nose tips. And you will notice they're all ground down to fine use, or a fine point. This one actually was longer, and also the length of it. This is kind of a shorter pair of tweezers. This is a longer pair, what, about 6 inches or so. I will show you the reason why I'll prefer the longer ones. So that takes us back to some more styles. Now you've got some little bitty tweezers here. You know what? These little bitty tweezers are for your freaking eyebrows or your nose hair or your ear hair. Well, you can use them in a backup to do locks with. Save them for your personal hygiene. These aren't freaking tweezers. I mean, they could be used as tweezers, but they're pliers. They're not for tweezer use. Don't do it. Look at this. What's this? Oh my gosh. Well, that would hold a pen probably, but you know what? These are actually diamond gem holders. They may look like tweezers kind of in a way, but also, no. It's not for locks. Same with this. While you could use that to load pins, it's got a nice long sharp point. They're hemostats. They're not for that. They're for medical use, and they're for recreational use, and they're not for lock work. Holding things when you're soldering them, you know. So let's talk about why I like pointed tip tweezers instead of blunt nose, instead of the kind that's got the little doohickey that you press down and it pushes the pin down in there. So with the little pin tweezers that have the push down mechanism, those are pretty blunt tip. That, again, in my opinion, is not great. So I mean, it boils down to having finely pointed tweezers. My holy grail of tweezers is going to be a pair of Nipex or simply titanium. It's just one of those things I've never gotten around to getting. So once you get used to it, fine tip tweezers are very good for holding pens. You don't really need the grooves. Some tweezers have little serrations in there. Some are smooth. I sand the tips of some of mine. But one of the main reasons why is because after I take a door lock off and I use tweezers to push down. So using these pin tweezers, while I could get in there like that, they're awkward, especially the bigger ones. This is actually a small pair, so while it would work, it's not ideal as compared to a finely pointed pair. So yet another thing, once you get that screw cap off and you take this out, this pair isn't real great for it, which is it's a backup pair, but one of the pairs that I use in the truck all the time has extremely fine points with serrations. The second thing, after you take that cap out and say the spring is in there, push your tweezer in and dig it out, because sometimes you can't just tap it on the counter to get that spring out. And even though it's not really cooperating here, what I had, you saw it lift up. See, it's lifting up there. So that's going to unfreeze it from wherever it is and let you get that spring out easier. So you don't have to sit there and tap and tap and tap. One of these, this must not be the pair, but one of them I've got finally done to get those springs. And also, going back to the longer style tweezers, that lets you do this. It lets you have plenty of room to spread it open in case you got to spread it apart, to do what I'm doing right here. See that? This one must be the one that I use in my truck. So that allows me to stick it in the actual hole, which is a little bitty tiny hole in the end of the spring, and lift it out. You're never going to do that with pen tweezers or any other blunt nose tweezers. And lastly, of course, you have to sometimes deal with putting pins and springs back in a lock. Now, this would be where pen and tweezers would be really nice to have, but I'm not going to go back and forth between tweezers, especially when I'm carrying, not carrying, but when I'm, repinning a bunch of locks. So I'm going to throw this flashlight in my mouth. This other light I have over here is not doing a thing. But as we all know, when we're loading top pins, you will do it once with the regular tip or pinning tweezers, and then once with the sharp tweezers. Okay, so yeah, it works. That's what they're designed to do, to hold it all steady. But it works just as effectively. So to end this kind of oddball video about tweezers of all things, if you're gonna go get tweezers, while you see some of these advertisements in the Locksmith Trade magazine, some of those tweezers are just really ridiculous, like some other tools. Just go buy, you can get these at a cheap hardware, Harbor Freight place for a pack of them for $4. You're gonna have some spares that you don't need, but I mean, you can use them for something else. If you got to heat up something, you can use that. Just go with the sharp pointed tweezers, trust me. Pen and tweezers are cool. They hold the little pins. Don't be offended by this if you're a straight up hardcore pen tweezers fan, because again, to each his own. This is just my opinion. It's my channel. I can throw out my opinion. But if you're going to be unscrewing a lot of tailpieces, especially as a working locksmith, where you have to unscrew a lot of tailpieces, going from this to another kind of tweezers or something else to depress the pin in the lock is awkward. It's inconvenient. Putting something down, picking it back up, loses time. So with this, push it down, unscrew the cap, throw it open, pull the spring out, and then grab your pins and just pin the lock as usual. So think about it. If you use blunt nose tweezers, you can always grind it down on a bench grinder like I did that one. I think those were kind of blunt. And again, don't forget that little stupid pivot pin if you have a pair of tweezers with that thing in it. Get rid of that sucker. Trust me, I've scratched my thumb on one. You don't want to do that. So again, thanks for watching my tweezer video. And if you have any comments or ideas, or you hate me for saying that pen tweezers suck, which I didn't say that. I said they're okay for what they're for, but they're just not for me. Even though I do have this really cool M-Heart pair. I think that would be a collector's item, maybe. So anyway, that is it. And again, thanks for watching. It's on to the next video. Y'all take it easy.